Welcome to Byte-Sized Tech, where we blend casual conversations with insightful discussions, on the latest in technology and gadgets.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it is. So today we're diving into some pretty interesting stories, from virtual reality hiccups to AI making waves in more ways than one.
Yeah, I feel like we're living in a science fiction movie these days.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. First up, Apple's Vision Pro headset. There's been a lot of buzz about them potentially hitting the pause button on production, which is kind of wild considering it just launched. What do you think?
It is surprising.
Yeah.
But, if we look at Apple's history, this isn't entirely out of character.
Yeah, true.
Remember the initial Apple Watch?
Oh, yeah.
They also adjusted production early on based on, the market response.
Right, but wasn't the Apple Watch ultimately a success?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So maybe this is just Apple being cautious, feeling things out, before going full throttle.
That's certainly possible. It could be strategic, especially since suppliers reportedly have enough components for a pretty significant number of headsets, somewhere in the range of 500,000 to 600,000.
Wow.
Perhaps Apple anticipated higher initial demand and is now, recalibrating.
Okay, so maybe not a complete flop, just a bit of a stumble out the gate. What factors do you think might have contributed to this lower than expected demand?
Well, the price point is definitely a consideration. The Vision Pro isn't exactly pocket change.
Yeah, it's pretty pricey.
It's a high-end device targeting a specific market. And then there's also the question of use cases. While the technology is impressive, it's still early days for mainstream VR adoption.
I see what you mean.
People might be hesitant to invest in such a pricey device without a clear understanding of how it fits into their daily lives.
And let's not forget the competition. There are already established players in the VR space.
Exactly. Apple isn't entering a vacuum. They're facing competition from companies like Meta, which have been in the VR game for a while and offer more affordable alternatives.
That's a good point. So it seems like a confluence of factors might be at play here. Pricing competition and maybe even the broader market's readiness for high-end VR.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned earlier that Apple is known for adjusting production based on demand. Do you think they might ramp back up if they see sales picking up?
Absolutely. And interestingly, the reports indicate that the production lines are still intact. They haven't dismantled anything, which suggests they're keeping their options open.
Sure.
If the market response shifts, or if Apple finds ways to address the price and use case concerns, they can easily scale up production again.
Okay, so the Vision Pro's fate isn't sealed just yet. It's more like a pause for reflection, a chance for Apple to fine-tune its strategy. Now let's pivot to the world of AI, where things are always evolving at lightning speed. NVIDIA recently made a splash with a massive $700 million acquisition of Run.AI, an AI orchestration company. And get this, they're planning to open source Run.AI's software. I have to admit, I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, it was an unexpected move, especially considering the hefty price tag. But if we dig a little deeper, it makes sense strategically. NVIDIA isn't just a hardware company anymore. They're positioning themselves as leaders in the AI ecosystem.
So it's about more than just selling powerful GPUs.
Exactly. By open sourcing Run.AI software, NVIDIA aims to make GPU cloud orchestration more accessible and efficient. Essentially, they're streamlining the process of managing AI infrastructure in the cloud.
Okay, I'm going to need a little help understanding that. What exactly is GPU cloud orchestration, and why should anyone care?
You're right. That might need some unpacking. Think of it this way. When you're training complex AI models, you need a lot of computing power.
Right.
And that's where GPUs come in. GPUs are specialized processors that excel at handling the massive calculations involved in AI. But managing all those GPUs in a cloud environment can be complex. That's where GPU cloud orchestration comes in.
Okay.
It's like the conductor of an orchestra, ensuring all the GPUs are working together harmoniously and efficiently.
Okay. So it's about making the whole process smoother and less of a headache for developers.
Precisely. And by open sourcing Run.AI's technology, NVIDIA is essentially making these tools available to a wider audience. Smaller companies and research groups who might not have had the resources to build complex GPU cloud infrastructures can now benefit from these advancements.
So it's kind of like democratizing AI development, making it more accessible to everyone.
That's a great way to put it. It's about lowering the barriers to entry and fostering a more collaborative and innovative AI ecosystem.
That's pretty cool. And there's another angle to this that I find interesting. NVIDIA has been facing some antitrust scrutiny lately, concerns about their dominant position in the GPU market.
Yeah.
Do you think this move towards open sourcing could be a way for them to address those concerns?
It's certainly a possibility. By promoting open source technology and fostering collaboration, NVIDIA is signaling a commitment to a more open and competitive market. Regulators tend to favor such moves as they promote innovation and prevent monopolies.
That's like they're saying, hey, we're not trying to control everything. We want to be part of a thriving and diverse AI community.
Exactly. And it's interesting to see how this contrasts with the approach of some other companies in the AI space, like DeepSeek, a Chinese AI startup that's been all about open source from the beginning. They've even chosen to avoid external funding, relying on community support and collaboration to drive their innovation.
It's fascinating to see these different models emerging. On the one hand, you have NVIDIA, this tech giant, embracing open source after a major acquisition. And on the other hand, you have DeepSeek, this scrappy startup, building its entire ethos around open collaboration.
It shows the growing momentum of the open source movement within the AI community. There's a recognition that the challenges of AI development are too complex for any one company to tackle alone. Collaboration and knowledge sharing are essential for progress.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But let's not forget that with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the ethical considerations that are becoming increasingly important as AI becomes more sophisticated.
Right? We can't just ignore the potential downsides. I was reading about some research evaluating the moral judgments of large language models, particularly in the context of self-driving cars. It's a pretty thought-provoking topic. As self-driving cars become more prevalent, how do we program them to make ethical decisions on the road? Who decides what's right and wrong in those split-second situations?
Those are some weighty questions, and there are no easy answers.
It's a bit like a philosophical dilemma unfolding in the real world.
Exactly. And it highlights the importance of having these conversations now before AI becomes even more deeply integrated into our lives.
Yeah.
We need to be thinking critically about the values we're embedding in these systems and how they might impact society.
Completely agree. And speaking of potential ethical pitfalls,
Yeah.
deepfakes are another area that's raising a lot of eyebrows. But there's been some positive news on that front recently. YouTube is teaming up with CAA, the talent agency, to help actors and athletes combat AI-generated deepfakes. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a step in the right direction. The idea is to give talent more control over their digital likeness and make it easier for them to identify and remove unauthorized AI replicas.
So it's about giving people tools to protect themselves from the potential misuse of their images and voices.
Exactly. Deepfakes can be used for malicious purposes, like spreading misinformation or damaging someone's reputation. This partnership aims to empower individuals to fight back against those kinds of abuses.
It's interesting that this is a collaboration between a major tech platform and a powerful entertainment industry player. It seems like there's a growing awareness of the need to address these ethical challenges collectively.
Absolutely. No single entity can solve these problems alone. We need collaboration between tech companies, policymakers, researchers, and the public to navigate the complex ethical landscape of AI.
It's a big challenge, but it's also an opportunity to shape the future of technology in a way that benefits everyone.
I couldn't agree more. It's an exciting time to be involved in this conversation.
And speaking of exciting, we've covered a lot of ground today, from Apple's production pause to NVIDIA's open source embrace and the ever-present ethical considerations surrounding AI. But before we wrap up, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on something. You know, with all these rapid advancements in AI, it's easy to get caught up in the hype and the possibilities. But do you ever wonder if we're moving too fast? Are we fully grasping the potential consequences of creating machines that can think and learn like humans? I mean, what happens if things go wrong?
Those are questions that keep many of us up at night. The potential of AI is truly mind-boggling, but so are the risks. And it's crucial that we proceed with caution, that we don't just blindly chase innovation without considering the potential downsides.
I completely agree. It's like we're at a crossroads, and the choices we make now will have a profound impact on the future.
Exactly. We're writing the rules of a new era, and it's imperative that we do so thoughtfully and responsibly.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to take a quick break. We got a lot more to unpack when we come back, so stay tuned.
It's a complex landscape for sure, and it's constantly evolving. Just when you think you've got a handle on things, something new emerges that throws everything into question.
Yeah, that's the nature of tech, I guess. Always changing, always pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
But speaking of pushing boundaries, let's circle back to NVIDIA for a moment. Their decision to open source world.AI's software could have like a ripple effect throughout the entire AI industry. What kind of impact do you anticipate seeing in the long run?
Well, I think one of the most significant outcomes could be a surge in innovation. By making these tools more accessible, NVIDIA is essentially empowering a whole new generation of AI developers. Imagine the creative solutions that could emerge when you remove the barriers to entry and allow more people to experiment and explore.
It's like opening the floodgates of creativity, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly AI development isn't limited to just the big players with deep pockets.
Exactly. And that increased competition could lead to even more rapid advancements in the field. When you have more minds working on a problem, you're bound to see faster progress.
It's like the classic saying, two heads are better than one, but on a massive scale. But there's another aspect to this that we haven't touched on yet. Open source software is often associated with a strong sense of community. Do you think that aspect will play a role in how this technology evolves?
Absolutely. Open source communities are known for their collaborative spirit and their willingness to share knowledge and resources. I think we'll see a similar dynamic emerge around run.AI software. Developers will be able to work together, contribute code, identify bugs, and improve the overall functionality of the platform. It's a collective effort that can lead to some truly remarkable outcomes.
It's almost like a digital barn raising everyone pitching in to build something bigger than themselves.
I love that analogy. It really captures the essence of open source collaboration.
But with all this talk about democratizing AI and fostering collaboration, I can't help but wonder about the potential downsides. What about the possibility of misuse? Could this open source approach inadvertently make it easier for malicious actors to develop harmful AI applications?
That's a valid concern, and it's one that the AI community is actively grappling with. Open source, by its very nature, means making the code freely available, which also means it could potentially fall into the wrong hands.
So it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, open source promotes innovation and collaboration. But on the other hand, it could also make it easier for bad actors to exploit these advancements.
Exactly. And that's why it's crucial to have safeguards in place. We need to think carefully about how we manage access to these powerful tools, how we promote responsible development, and how we mitigate potential risks.
It's like giving someone a powerful tool without providing proper safety instructions. The potential for harm is undeniable.
Exactly. And that's why the ethical considerations we discussed earlier are so critical. We need to be thinking about the potential consequences of every technological advancement, not just the immediate benefits.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always a straight line. There are bumps along the way, and we need to be prepared to address them head on.
It's about finding the right balance between innovation and responsibility.
And that balance can be tricky to achieve, especially in a field that's moving as fast as AI. But it's essential that we keep striving for it.
I agree. The stakes are simply too high to ignore the potential downsides.
But let's not get too bogged down in the doom and gloom. We started this deep dive by talking about Apple's Vision Pro headset and the possibility that they might have overestimated the initial demand. But do you think there's still a future for VR? Or was this just a case of hype exceeding reality?
I think it's too early to write off VR. The technology is still evolving, and there's a lot of potential for it to become more integrated into our lives.
I mean, just imagine the possibilities for gaming, entertainment, education, and even remote work VR could fundamentally change how we interact with the digital world.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the potential applications in fields like healthcare engineering and architecture. Imagine surgeons practicing complex procedures in a virtual environment, or architects designing buildings that they can walk through before they're even built. The possibilities are truly endless.
It's like stepping into a whole new dimension. But you mentioned that the technology is still evolving. What are some of the key challenges that need to be overcome for VR to truly reach its full potential?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is the cost. As we discussed earlier, high-end VR headsets like the Vision Pro are still quite expensive, putting them out of reach for many consumers. We need to see more affordable options emerge for VR to become truly mainstream.
That makes sense. It's kind of like the early days of personal computers. They were initially quite expensive, but as technology advanced and production costs came down, they became more accessible to the average person.
Exactly. And I think we'll see a similar trajectory with VR. As the technology matures and competition heats up, prices will inevitably come down.
But cost isn't the only factor, right? There are also technical challenges that need to be addressed.
Absolutely. One of the biggest obstacles is the so-called screen door effect, which refers to the visible grid of pixels that can be seen when you're wearing a VR headset. This can be quite distracting and takes away from the immersive experience. We need to see higher resolution displays and better optics to eliminate this issue.
And what about motion sickness?
Yeah.
I've heard that some people experience nausea when using VR headsets.
That's another challenge that needs to be tackled. Motion sickness in VR is often caused by a mismatch between what you're seeing and what your body is feeling. Developers are working on ways to reduce this dissonance, such as improving tracking accuracy and reducing latency.
So there's a lot of work to be done, but it sounds like the future of VR is still bright.
I believe so. It's a technology with immense potential, and I'm excited to see how it evolves in the years to come.
And speaking of the years to come, we've only scratched the surface of the AI conversation. We talked about open source ethical considerations and the potential for both good and bad. But I'm curious, what are some of the other emerging trends in AI that you're particularly excited about?
Well, one area that I find fascinating is the development of generative AI, which is essentially AI that can create new content, such as text, images, music, and even video.
It's like giving AI a spark of creativity.
Exactly. And the possibilities are truly mind-blowing. Imagine AI writing novels, composing symphonies, or creating entirely new art forms that we haven't even conceived of yet.
It's almost like we're entering a new renaissance, but instead of human artists leading the charge, it's AI pushing the boundaries of creativity.
That's a great way to put it. And it raises some interesting questions about the nature of creativity itself. What does it mean for something to be creative if it's generated by a machine? Where does human ingenuity end and artificial intelligence begin?
Those are deep philosophical questions that we could probably spend hours debating.
I agree. But it's a conversation that we need to be having as AI becomes increasingly capable of generating content that was once considered the exclusive domain of human artists.
And let's not forget about the practical implications of generative AI. It has the potential to revolutionize industries like marketing, advertising, and entertainment.
Absolutely. Imagine using AI to create personalized ad campaigns tailored to each individual's interests, or to generate unique storylines for movies and video games. The possibilities are endless.
It's like opening up a whole new world of creative possibilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes generative AI so exciting. It's not just about automation or efficiency. It's about expanding the realm of what's possible and pushing the boundaries of human imagination.
But with all this talk about AI's potential, it's important to remember that it's still a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
Absolutely. The choices we make about how we develop and deploy AI will ultimately determine its impact on society.
It's a reminder that we need to approach AI with both enthusiasm and caution, recognizing both its potential and its limitations.
I couldn't agree more. It's a delicate balance that we need to maintain as we navigate this uncharted territory.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this episode of Bite-Sized Tech. We've covered a lot of ground today, from Apple's VR stumble to NVIDIA's open source embrace and the mind-boggling possibilities of generative AI. But before we sign off, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on one last question.
I'm all ears.
We've discussed the potential benefits and risks of AI, but I'm curious, what do you think the long-term impact of AI will be on humanity? Will it ultimately enhance our lives or lead us down a path of unintended consequences?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't think anyone has a definitive answer. But I can offer my perspective. I believe that AI has the potential to be one of the most transformative technologies in human history. It has the power to solve some of the world's most pressing problems, from climate change to disease eradication. But it also has the potential to amplify existing inequalities and create new challenges that we haven't even anticipated yet.
It's like standing at the edge of a precipice looking out at a landscape that's both breathtakingly beautiful and potentially perilous.
Exactly. And the choices we make now will determine which path we ultimately take.
It's a reminder that the future isn't preordained. We have the power to shape it with our actions and decisions.
And that's both exciting and daunting.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive for today.
It's been a fascinating journey.
I completely agree. And I want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this exploration of the ever-evolving world of technology. Thanks for tuning in to Bite-Sized Tech. If you enjoyed the episode, like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and I hope you've enjoyed our little glimpse into the future of tech. But before we sign off, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the ethics of AI. It's a topic that keeps coming up, and for good reason. And as AI becomes more powerful and integrated into our lives, it's crucial that we consider the potential consequences, both positive and negative.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We're essentially creating a new species of intelligence. And we need to be thoughtful about how we nurture and guide its development. It's like raising a child. We have responsibility to instill values, set boundaries, and teach it right from wrong.
That's a powerful analogy. And it highlights the importance of having these conversations now before AI becomes so advanced that it's beyond our control.
Yeah.
We need to be proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. And it's not just about preventing AI from becoming some sort of Hollywood-style supervillain. It's about ensuring that AI is used for good, that it benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
It's interesting to think about how our understanding of AI ethics is evolving. Just a few years ago, the conversation was dominated by fears of AI becoming sentient and taking over the world. But now the focus seems to be shifting towards more practical concerns, like bias in algorithms, data privacy, and potential impact on jobs.
That's a good observation. As AI becomes more commonplace, we're starting to see the real-world implications of its use. And it's becoming clear that the ethical challenges are as complex and multifaceted as AI itself.
Right? And there are no easy answers. It's not a simple matter of programming AI to be good. We need to consider the broader societal context, the power dynamics at play, and the potential unintended consequences of our actions.
It's a constant process of learning and adaptation. We need to be willing to challenge our assumptions, question our biases, and engage in open and honest dialogue about the future we're creating.
And that dialogue needs to involve everyone, not just tech experts and policymakers. We need to be having conversations about AI ethics in our homes, schools, and communities.
Absolutely. AI is not just a technological issue, it's a societal issue. And the choices we make today will have ripple effects for generations to come.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today, but this conversation is far from over. The world of tech is constantly evolving, and we'll be here to guide you through it every step of the way. Thanks for tuning in to Byte-Sized Tech. If you enjoyed the deep dive, like, comment, share, and subscribe for more fun tech discussions.